Good morning, everyone. I have a real treat for you today. We have Charles Gaba, a friend of the show, joining us momentarily to spend the hour with us explaining what to do next when it comes to Affordable Care Act enrollment and what we face in our healthcare hellscape. I need to give him credit for that. That's his phrase, healthcare hellscape, and I have now stolen it from him. So, a little bit about Charles. This is, I love this photo of him with his son and President Biden. But what you may not know is that Charles, not only is he an expert on all things Affordable Care Act and health insurance, but he has just put up a guide on his website called Slouching Toward Enrollment. And I'm going to share in the chat a link to that so you can refer to that now or later. And the purpose of this guide is to basically help people navigate what is happening right now with, again, ACA enrollments this starting this weekend, what we may expect, some of us who have to go through the marketplace to get health insurance, what our premium hikes are going to look like. And guess what, guys? Even if you are not in the healthcare marketplace and you get your health insurance through your employer, I think you might be soon facing sticker shock when open enrollment begins at your workplace and you actually dare to take a look at what your premiums are going to be. So, Charles, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we actually begin, I need to show you this clip of the Republicans. This is Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, claiming the Republicans have great ideas for healthcare. And Charles, this shocks me because I am old enough to remember in 2017 when they passed the terrible billionaire tax cut, when Donald Trump, or when they tried to repeal the ACA in the spring, and they didn't do that, but then they did this other sort of backdoor effort to harm all of us through this tax giveaway to the billionaires and the corporations. At that time, Donald Trump said he had a great healthcare plan and he'd have it to us in 2 weeks. Now, that was 2018, and I think it's 2017, I'm sorry. And if my math is correct, that's 8 years ago, Charles. So let me play this for you, because now, should we actually believe him? Give him a second chance. Listen to this, Charles.
We're doing right now what we have been doing, what we were already doing, because we knew we were coming up to the end of the year, and we know that healthcare is a major burden for the American people. We've been working on it since day one of this Congress. We worked on it in the years prior. And we've already demonstrated, this is not talking points for us. When we say the Republican Party is the only party that has any chance at fixing health care for the American people, we've demonstrated it. We put it into the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut. As you know, we strengthened the Medicaid program. We started there because it was the lowest hanging fruit. Why? Because the fraud is so glaring. And we cut out.
Okay, I couldn't listen to him anymore, Charles, because I don't want to platform his lies, the detailed lies. But can you react to that for us? Are the Republicans the only one who have a good health care plan for us, and we're just a bunch of fools?
Well, whether we're a bunch of fools or not, I think.
Two separate questions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they've got nothing. They've got nothing because the thing is, any actual healthcare plan is going to involve spending a significant amount of money on other people. I mean, and they don't want to do that. They want to keep all the money for themselves and their wealthy, cronies and such. So they don't want anyone else to get it. And, so that's really sort of the start and end of it. The exact amounts and how you can save money and how you can make it more efficient, all that. Yeah, there's all sorts of little details like that you can argue about. But the bottom line is they don't want to spend money on healthcare for the vast bulk of the population. Period. And so it's nonsense. And of course the that total recall meme, the 2 weeks meme of Arnold Schwarzenegger as in the disguise. Yeah, that's been going on for 8 years now, and it'll go on for another 8 years, as far as I can tell from the Republican side of the aisle. It's everything.
So let's anchor ourselves to where we are right now, right? Because right now we're in the middle of a government shutdown in terms of funding for everything, unless you're building a $300 million, which is going to be $1 billion ballroom, or you're gallivanting over to Japan. There's no money for anything, and then or there's this fake like withholding of SNAP benefits, which they could fund, and they're actually required to fund with some reserves. That's going to happen as of November 1st, which I talked about yesterday. So people's payments, depending on their states, that are supposed to come in throughout November won't. And of course, the House, we just saw Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has decided not to call the House back. This has nothing to do with government funding. They're funded. It has everything to do with the Epstein files. I kid you not. I mean, I know it's hard for me to say it out loud and believe it, because you always sound like, is everything about Epstein? It might be, because we're talking about him not wanting to swear in Representative Grijalva from Arizona, because she would be that 218 vote to have this discharge petition to release this. I mean, this sounds like a television show. This is our reality. But the thing is, right now, the government shutdown relates, as you know, to the appropriation side of the budget. I had you on, I think, right after the budget bill was passed, which did this, totally eroded so much of our healthcare protections in this country. But you don't get, as folks know on the show, you still need to have the appropriations. That's why they need to pass this continuing resolution, because the Appropriations Committee has not funded the specific funding for next year. So we're in this freeze, and the Democrats, thank God, right, are holding the line. Now, I saw on your website, you, like me, want them to hold a line for everything, including concentration camps and private goon squads. But at the very least, they're holding the line because they don't want what's about to happen. And they want us to actually have healthcare subsidies. Let me say it in a non-nerdy way. You can say the nerdy way. They don't want us to have sticker shock and price hikes. They want people to be able to afford health insurance so they don't die early, so they can actually get healthcare, so they don't spread diseases because of human dignity, and Democrats care about people. The Republicans are saying, we have a plan, just trust us, just pass our continuing resolution, trust us, and it just feels like Lucy's football. So can you anchor us to where we are?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, what they've done is they did exactly what I was hoping they would do. And so I don't want to make this sound like, oh, see, they followed my advice. No, a lot of people were saying this. I happen to be one of them because this happens to be my, right in my wheelhouse. But the ACA tax credits or subsidies, that is like a perfect poster child, a perfect, upfront, in your face issue for them to focus on, for several reasons. First of all, because it's happening right now. The budget bill it decimates Medicaid and a lot of other healthcare stuff, but most of that, not all of it, but a big chunk of that was pushed off deliberately until after the midterms, right? So that we don't have to face the backlash of it until after the midterms. A lot of it's actually happening before that, which I've written about as well. But the stuff that's happening before that isn't like the most visible stuff. Some of it gets kind of wonky and behind the scenes and all that. Some of it affects a very, very narrow, very specific slice of people. But it's not really in your face and obvious. Whereas the ACA subsidies, that's something that's happening right now. It's affecting 24 odd million people. And it's not theoretical. It's not a hypothetical.
Well, speak to me, instead of using the words like subsidy or tax credit, pretend I'm a working single mom from any given state, and I'm one of the 24 million. What am I seeing right now? And let's say I'm working from, I work from home and I make stuff for Etsy. So I've got to deal with my own health insurance. Tell me what because the word subsidy or
Right.
tax credit, do I have to wait for a tax return? Just tell me what I'm seeing right now, what that means to me.
Sure. So basically, right now, that is this year, if you have there's a sliding scale formula for financial assistance to help people pay for their health insurance on the individual market. And
Okay.
again, basically, you take the whole country, the whole population, all 340 million of us or so. Around half of us have health insurance through our employer. Around
Okay.
another third has health insurance through either Medicare or Medicaid. And then you've
Okay.
got the rest of us who are basically on the individual market or the non-group market. And that is basically people who are self-employed. I think around half are self-employed, like myself, and I think yourself, I believe.
No, I'm not. I'm
you're
making myself. I work at Wayne State. I'm a full-time law
Oh, that's
professor.
right.
And I just do this on the side. And
Right.
my hypothetical, I am self-employed. Yeah.
Okay, so right. So okay, but in my case, it's not hypothetical because my wife and I are both self-employed, right? So we have no employer to provide health insurance, or they do work for a company, but they work for mostly small businesses that do not provide health insurance for their employees, right? You work for a small coffee shop or something. There's not a big chain or something.
Sure.
And that's what basically people who used to go directly to Blue Cross or Meridian or whoever the insurance company is and buy on the individual market. And but that can get very expensive. And the reason for that, there's a lot of reasons for that I won't get into, but the bottom line is that this is actually true of if you have insurance through your employer, as half the country does, it's also very expensive. It's just most people don't realize how expensive it is because the employer usually pays for of it.
And good. Some employers let you know. They send you something saying, by the way, we're pitching in a big chunk of this.
Right.
And then you go, wow. And you only find out when you lose your job and you have to pay for what's called COBRA. And you're like, oh my God, that's what it cost? Okay, yeah, I got it. So
that's what COBRA,
behind the scenes, go ahead.
Right. So so that's what COBRA is. Basically, if you lose your job, you can still you're allowed to stay on the same coverage for a period of time after you lose your job. Except that now you have to pay the full price, and that's when all of a sudden you're paying 2 or 3 times as much. I guess probably the best way to describe what's about to happen in the ACA market is 24 million, or not all 24 million, but a big chunk of those 24 million people are about to find themselves going on COBRA, essentially, because the financial...
That's a really good way to describe it, Charles. Good. Okay.
Yeah, basically a chunk of the federal financial assistance that has been going to help cover the cost of insurance is about to go away for a lot of people. And so so a lot of them are going to go from being from receiving a significant chunk of financial aid to none at all. So they're going to have to go cold turkey, pay full price all in one shot. But the rest of us, or the rest of the people in the ACA market, they're still going to receive some assistance, but it's going to be a lot less. So
and you say assistance, but it's been hidden. It's not like I pay full price and then I get a rebate. It's just built in. And a lot of people maybe just don't pay attention and they've been paying it. Is that just sort of like the same thing with employer-based insurance? Is that possible that you've just been paying your premium every month and not thought a lot about the fact that it's subsidized behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to healthcare.gov yourself and you enroll, then it does say, you plug in your info, you plug in your income, and it'll say, okay, you should be eligible for this much per month in help. And then when you go to actually buy the plan, it'll say, here's what you pay, or here's what the full price is, here's how much help you're getting, and then here's how much you actually pay. It does tell you that, but
it tells you that, but you know what? I also see that when I buy stuff online, you're like, oh yeah, there's a discount, and then you ignore it because you just get your price.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people don't really realize that, or they don't, or maybe they know, but they didn't really think about it. And also, if you go through a broker, which a lot of people, broker or agent, it depends on them. It depends on how clear and upfront they are about it. But the bottom line is there are a lot of people who either don't know or they kind of knew but they forgot, and they're all of them are getting a very rude awakening about, holy crap, I forgot about that. Now I'm screwed. Okay,
so I'm going to step back and say the whole landscape, if I got this right, is of all the people in America, the 300 plus million of us, around half of us they or their family members get insurance through the employer. And then with the other half, you're either Medicare, Medicaid, or you're somehow using one of these marketplaces, right?
Right. And then
are there some people
who are uninsured at all?
And then there's uninsured because that part, the individual mandate went out the door, right? So you're not required to get, well, are you still getting a penalty if you're not buying health insurance, or did that fall away?
No, that's been, the federal penalty has been gone for years now. That's since 2019.
Right.
There are about a half dozen states that have their own version of that, but the main one for the most of the country, that's been gone.
So the ranks of the uninsured are going to go up, it seems like, because people are just going to say, I need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
The question though is, if you go uninsured, what happens to your medication? Do you have to try to buy it from Canada? I mean, there's some people who can't be uninsured because.
Yeah. That is going to happen. There are going to be the CBO projected that around 4 million, I believe around 4 million or so of those, of the 24 million or so on the ACA market, they predict that around 4 million or so they expect to basically become uninsured entirely, and to lose.
And is that going to be the people who are younger, who you really wanted in the pool anyway, because they think they're not sick, or is it going to be the older who've given up? I mean,
I suspect it's mostly going to be the so-called young invincibles, which again,
right,
that tends to cause it to be more expensive for everybody else. But there are also going to be some older folks who
maybe pre-Medicare folks who are just like, I'll just take a couple more years and I'll.
Yeah, if you're in your early 60s, there are going to be some people who are going to be like, you know what, if you're in your early 60s, the odds are you probably have some medical issues, but maybe you're very, you're pretty healthy, and maybe you're willing to cross your fingers and suck it up and and pray to God that you can tide things over until you hit 65 and go on Medicare. So
I'm worried about kids though, because let's say you have a family plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, you know what if I just do let's say I'm that mom I'm talking about, and I'm like, my kids are pretty healthy, and I just, there are flu clinics at school or whatever. I'm just going to drop them from my health insurance. Could people do that?
They could.
I hope to God they don't, but I'm just wondering the catastrophes that could happen now.
Yeah, I mean, they could, although children, especially at the lower income levels, the income cutoff for children to be on either Medicaid or the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, is higher than it is for most adults in most states. So
you could split it. You might be paying for a family plan, but you could put your kids. I mean, there's ways to navigate this. Okay, let me stop asking.
Yeah, there are going to be some cases where the parents may be uninsured, but at least the children are covered, through Medicaid or CHIP or whatever. Or you might just put your kids. I mean, and that's exactly the thing, is that there's going to be a mad scramble of people finding. And what's going to also happen is there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be desperately trying to get employed, like they're self-employed, but they say, you know what, I can't afford to be self-employed anymore because of the insurance situation. So they're going to try to get a job with a corporation and to get employer coverage.
Or as you mentioned, small businesses, is it 30 employees? There's a threshold number, 50, sorry. So it's going to hurt smaller businesses where people are going to say, I've really liked working for my local coffee shop or my local bookstore. I like to be in my community, but people are going to have to go to jobs where there are 50 or more people because they can't afford this.
And this is happening because of other reasons. Just last night, I think Amazon announced they're laying off like 16,000 people or something. The federal, of course, the Doge thing, they laid off hundreds of thousands of federal employees. So you're really, trying to swim upstream here. Like you're trying to get a corporate job at the same time that they're shedding, enrollment employees. So
oof. Okay, so let's start. I want you to have the floor because you just wrote this guide. It is October 28th. This weekend, I think, is it November 1st? This open enrollment begins. Can you walk through what advice you would give to people not just people who are doing ACA enrollment, but anyone else affected by this? What should we be doing right now?
Sure. So this is actually, I actually update this guide every year because there's always changes. There's always some changes and tweaks and such every year, but it's basically around a dozen or so general pieces of advice of, tips and things to look out for and so forth, before you enroll. And, usually it's just minor tweaks and such. This year, it was the most depressing. I put it off as long as I could because I didn't want to have to update it because I knew how depressing it was going to be. I admit that a lot of this is, like, as I described, it's like giving somebody a Band-Aid, for a gaping gunshot wound. It's like, this will help a little, but some of it is still good advice. So the first thing I would say is, okay, I don't want to sugarcoat this. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be very ugly, okay, for most enrollees. Having said that, I don't want to overstate how ugly it is. It's going to be very ugly, but not all of the subsidies, not all of the financial aid is going away. That's the first thing to remember, is that these are so the original ACA had a formula and it was always underpowered. It was always underfunded because that was the only way they could get it, or they felt they could get it through at the time. They always intended to beef it up. It didn't happen for a long time. It's been beefed up for the last 5 years, up to roughly where I think it probably should have been in the first place. And that's a good thing. Unfortunately, they were not able to make it permanent. So it was only in place for 5 years. We're coming up on that 5 years. So
that's what's happening. Okay, this is important. Got you.
And so I think it's around a quarter, around 25%, maybe 30% of the federal assistance, the tax credits are going away at the end of December. Now,
so for the 24 million people, it's not either the amount of or total credits going away. You said about 30% of those people.
Maybe 25, 30%, something like that.
Okay, got it.
Now, that may not sound too devastating, except that what it means in a lot of cases is a lot of people are going to be going from paying $5 or $10 a month to paying $100 a month. Now,
that's huge.
If you're middle class or higher, $90 a month doesn't sound too bad. But I'm talking about for people who only earn $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, for a single parent or something, that can be devastating. That can,
they're already maxed out on their car payment. They're already maxed out on their mortgage.
That's your electric
et cetera.
bill, et cetera.
Right.
So like you said, you're picking between one versus the other in some cases. In other cases, at the upper end, right, if you go into the middle, sort of middle class range, there's a cutoff point where you are no longer going to be, because it's a sliding scale, but it slides off gradually, right? As your income increases, the subsidies decrease until they taper off to nothing. That tapering off is going to be cut off immediately at around 4 times the poverty level, which means that if you earn even $1 over that, in theory, if you could earn even $1 over that, you go from getting some subsidies to none at all in one shot, and that means you're paying full price. In a lot of cases, that means you're talking twice, 3 times, 4 times. I've seen extreme examples, even 5 or 6 times as much in theory. Okay.
What is is there a standard? Is this the federal poverty level, or is it state by state?
No, it's the federal poverty level it's based on a combination of the federal poverty level, which varies depending on how many people are in your household.
Sure.
And your household income, right? How high or low your household income is. And there's what's called a benchmark plan. Basically, you go to the exchange and you see all these different plans. You got dozens of different plans, and they're in different groups by metal levels, is what they're called, is bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Bronze has the lowest premiums but the highest deductibles. Platinum is the highest premiums with the lowest deductibles. And what they did is they said, okay, there's a silver plan, which is sort of their benchmark or their flagship plan. That's the one that they base the subsidy formula on. So whatever that benchmark silver plan costs at full price, that's what the formula is based on, in combination with other stuff. But it gets a little.
So, for example, the federal poverty level for a family of 4 right now is something like $32,000.
Right.
Got it. And it slides down, obviously, depending on how many people you have. Okay.
And so if you earn even a little bit over that, so like I said, so you go, and in some cases, if you're in a state, and like the most extreme example I found, is West Virginia.
Okay.
West Virginia is already the most expensive individual market insurance in the country. And their premiums, their average full price premiums are about to go up another, I think like 12 or 13% or something. On top of that, they're going to be averaging over $1,300 per month per enrollee at full price. Okay. And so if you're let's say you're a 64-year-old couple, right? You're 1 year away from Medicare eligibility. You got 1 year to go. You could see, and if you earn just a little bit over that cutoff threshold, you could see your costs going up. I think it said like almost like 7 times as much or something is what you're paying now, which would amount to like 70% of your gross income, which of course nobody's ever gonna, you're talking like $5,000 a month, in some cases. No one can afford that. They're not going to do it. And so what's going to happen is some people are going to be priced out completely. Millions more are going to downgrade to avoid that massive price hit. So you'll still have coverage, but you'll go from gold to silver, from silver to bronze, from a PPO to an HMO.
And all that means you're suddenly going to, maybe your premiums lower, but your out of pockets are going to be more or something like that, right?
Yeah, yes. And in a lot of cases, it's not even one versus the other. In a lot of cases, your premiums will still go up. They're just going to not go up as much. So like your deductible will go up 5,000. And your premium will go up, 200 instead of 500 or something.
Do any of these plans have are any of the sort of low end plans, the cheaper to pay for plans, have a maximum amount? So that's terrible, right? If there's a catastrophe, it's like, well, oh well.
Actually, every ACA plan, every ACA compliant plan has what's called a maximum out of pocket cap.
That's good. A maximum out of pocket, but is there a maximum that, like, let's say you need heart surgery and is there a cap on what they'll pay?
On what the insurance? No, that's right. That's what the MOOP is about. It basically says that that in a worst case scenario, total hit by bus, cancer, whatever extreme situation, your total costs, as long as it's all in network, that's the key. As long as everything is done in network, right? The hospital, doctor, the anesthesiologist, everything is all done in network. The most that you can possibly have to pay is the premiums plus that MOOP. That maximum out of pocket cost.
And that's good. That's good as long as you're in network. But if you're not, then you might be in trouble.
Yeah. But the thing is, the thing about the MOOP cap, it's great for if you get hit by a bus.
I like that MOOP, maximum out of pocket. Okay.
Yes. That includes that includes deductibles, co-pays, and co-insurance. Basically everything besides your premiums, right?
Right.
It's fine. It's a good thing to prevent you from going bankrupt if you get hit by a bus once in your life. The problem is, what if you get hit by a bus every year for the rest of your life, right? And that's what a lot of people are facing. If you have chronic conditions that require expensive prescription medications, like constantly, not just one time, but like every month you have to pay. There's this like crazy expensive drug that you have to have, or you're going to die, or you're going to be disabled or whatever. That's where it becomes a problem, because that MOOP, it may be up to like $20,000 per year. Again, a household, you may be able to take a $20,000 hit once, but you're not going to be able to do it every single year forever. And that's a whole other thing. So,
and I find that this is the trouble with even employer purchase health insurance, because there's sometimes a maximum out of pocket per person. And then there's for the whole family. And I pay much more in premiums because of the caps I get, because I know who in the family has what condition. But it's really discouraging. I mean, where this gets to us, and we're going to continue talking about what to do, is it just seems to me that single payer would make a lot more sense for businesses, for especially small businesses, and for all of us. But anyway, here we are. People, so now people are now going to be facing opening up that email and deciding what to do. Some people went through brokers before. Others just figured it out on healthcare.gov without brokers. What's your advice for people when they see the new non or less subsidized premiums?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat. It's going to be ugly. But having said that, so the first thing is not all the subsidies are going away for everyone, right? So that's a little bit of silver lining. The second thing is, and I say this every year, but it's more important than ever this year, shop around. That is, do not allow yourself to be automatically renewed into
Oh,
the plan.
if you do nothing, you're going to be renewed into your existing plan at whatever price it's at.
Right, exactly. And that's never, it's never a good idea to just do that. I mean, you may want to keep the same plan, but you should check. You should check every year because things change.
And the window's going to close when? When does the window close?
Yes, that's okay. So that's number one, and that's actually number one on my advice list is don't delay. Act sooner rather than later. So there are actually 2 deadlines in most states. The first deadline is December 15th, and that is for coverage starting January 1st, right? So if you don't want to have any sort of a gap, enroll before December 15th. And then your coverage for next year will kick in on January 1st. No gap in there. It does vary there are some states that have later deadlines. As in a few states it's as late as New Year's Eve in some cases for it to start the very next day. There is one exception. This is Idaho already started open enrollment 2 weeks ago. They started on October 15th. But they're only running it through December. So that's their final deadline is December 15th. So if you live in Idaho and you don't enroll by December 15th, basically you're out of luck unless you qualify for a special enrollment period.
So if we generally keep December 15th in mind, what about people who are thinking, well, what if a deal is negotiated? Like, what if I sign up? Don't laugh at me, Charles. I'm a lawyer. And I decide to, like right now, I'm deciding what to do with my own plan, but let's say I'm that mom and I've been using the marketplace and I'm thinking maybe I'll downgrade a little because I can't afford this sticker shock, but maybe I can afford paying a little more. And if I sign it up and then a budget, they finally figure out how to fund the government and things change, am I locked in? Or do you think I can open this up? And you can.
Okay. Well, again, except in Idaho. That's where the second,
I live in Idaho. No, I'm kidding. I want to.
that's where the second deadline kicks in, and that's January 15th is the final deadline. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So December 15th for coverage starting January 1st. January 15th is the final deadline for coverage starting February 1st. But that means that if it's in between there, and you've already signed up, in theory, you could switch your plan to a different one, and so you'd be on one plan for January and then the other one for February.
So this is really good. Unless you're in Idaho, you get a second bite of the apple.
Right.
So don't delay. Get your plan in place,
right.
And you might be able to adjust. Okay.
And that's, by the way, I should note that's this coming year only. Starting in next year in 2027, they're going to make the Trump administration making December 15th the cutoff. But that's okay. That's next.
So we've talked about the micro, like our lives, and there's someone who asked about Medicare. Hold that thought. What I want to do now is step back to the macro. So now that I kind of understand finally what people have been talking about, these subsidies, I get it. It's the part that's contributed before I even pay anything.
Right.
Right now, I saw you chatting on social media about something the Democrats are considering, which is to say, you know what, we just want Republicans to extend these subsidies so there's not sticker shock just for a year. Obviously, you want 5 years, and there's a reason, and no pain, no gain, I think is your reason, and this is a cynical perspective. But talk about what it actually Democrats are. They all asking for just 1 year, or is it a back down position? Can you tell me what's going on?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's the other way around. It's the Republican. So before the shutdown, about 10, I think it was around 10 Republican House members in vulnerable districts, right, in swing districts, they introduced a bill to bump out the subsidies by 1 year. And that was all it did, just a 1 year bump out. And, of course they were doing it because they're scared they're going to lose their seats, in the midterms. And so, yeah, kick it
Because
out.
right now, when people start to sign up for their health insurance and they realize they can't afford it, they're going to be screaming about it and be angry at the Republicans, right? So the
Yeah.
Republicans are like, okay, let's just bump it out another year
Right.
because, the midterms, people won't see this till after we're reelected, is what they're thinking.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the reality is it's quite that simple because of the timing of it, what would actually happen, a 1 year bump out, what actually would happen is everybody would be freaking out and getting these scary notices and having these conversations and seeing these headlines about just before the midterms. In some ways, it might be worse a year from now for the Republicans because they're going to have this this national panic over it just before the midterms instead of a year before. However, having said that, and then yes, so they put that forth. It never went anywhere, or at least it hasn't gone anywhere as of yet.
Let me just use my calendar ahead for a second because you're thinking fast. Right now it's October 28th. So October 28th, the end of October 2026 is like
A week.
10 days away from, right? Because next Tuesday is our off season. Okay, got you.
Yeah,
So some people cynically think the Republicans, they're thinking, oh, it's going to be fine. But some Democrats are thinking, oh, you have no idea how ugly this could get right before your midterm. Okay.
Yeah, and so that hasn't gone anywhere as of yet. Frankly, I'm surprised that and honestly, I think the Epstein files, and of course, honestly, part of me thinks that one of the reasons Mike Johnson hasn't actually put that bill on, because if he put that bill on the floor, it would put some pressure on the Democrats. It really would. It would, if they were to say, well, here's a bill, let's bump it out by a year and let's help people.
It would put a ton of pressure
It would put a lot of
on the
pressure
Democrats.
I don't think they should take, but they don't even, so far, they haven't even had to debate whether to worry about it because they're not even willing to put it on the floor. There's a part of me that wonders if the reason why Johnson hasn't put that on the floor is because in order to do that, he would have to bring the House back into session and he would have to swear in the new congresswoman.
Because just how the mechanics work is the House passed their continuing resolution. It's a no-go in the Senate because unless the Senate Republicans kick out the filibuster, they don't have enough Dems. And by the way, they could at any time. So this is going to have to go back to the House.
Yeah, one way or the other, they would have to vote on. Well, plus this is a separate bill. Remember, that's the continuing resolution. This is a separate bill.
Oh, this is a separate standalone bill just to fix the sticker shock issue.
They would either have to pass it as a standalone bill or they would have to roll it into a new version of the CR.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
So
oh my gosh.
The House is going to.
It is Epstein then. And I don't necessarily think
I'm not saying
that
it is. I'm just
saying.
saying.
But there are people who, whether or not you think Donald Trump is hugely implicated in those files, we know other people are based on what we have seen in the reporting. And so, a lot of big money. And the same people who are trying to stop the Epstein information from getting out don't actually care if we all die without health insurance, quite honestly. It's just a fact.
As far as I can
don't
tell.
know that they, because if they did care, they wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. So, back to, so is there anything else you want to tell us about what people should be doing besides don't wait, get on it?
Yeah. So number 2 is I strongly advise only enrolling through an official ACA health exchange website or broker, an authorized broker or agent, or an authorized partner. Basically, there's already been a problem of scams of scammy website. I've seen YouTube ads where they make it sound like, oh, this is Obamacare, this is the ACA, and it turns out no, it's not. There's lots of scams, lots of shady type of organizations and such. And so I would strongly advise. There's 30 states that use healthcare.gov. That's the federal ACA exchange website. Healthcare.gov is the official one.
Right.
The other 20 states plus DC each have their own ACA, state-based exchange website. California, it's Covered California, and I have a list of all. If you go to the link, on my guide, I have a list and links to all of them. But 21 states have their own. Including Illinois just launched theirs yesterday. Illinois is the one split.
Okay.
Gradually, they've been sort of splitting off of the federal exchange onto their own. So there's 21 states that have their own. I would use those. There are some authorized third-party brokers that you can trust, and I list a link to some of those as well. But make sure it's the real deal, and it's going to be worse than ever this year because for a couple reasons. First, because the Trump administration, they have no problem with scams and con artists, right? They made that very clear. But also because people are freaking out because of the lost federal subsidies. So there's more of a panic to, oh my God, this place says that it can be cheap healthcare or less expensive healthcare. So there's going to be a swell, I'm sure, of scams and such to look out for.
And it's so hard because there was a time when I was looking into this when I was deciding whether I wanted to. It's a long story, but anyway, once you fill out one of these forms, even on healthcare.gov, people start texting and calling you.
Yeah, it's a little.
You don't know who they are.
A little bit like the whole thing about donating to a candidate and suddenly you're on every candidate's mailing list.
Yeah.
The third, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. I won't get all of them, but probably the third most important one that I should note is there are about a dozen states, and by an amazing coincidence, the vast majority of them are blue states, which are actually proactively taking actions to help mitigate the damage from the subsidies expiring. And
right.
I just want to focus on a couple of them. New Mexico. If you live in New Mexico, they have pulled off, or they are pulling off what appears to be something of an economic miracle here, because New Mexico is not known for being. My understanding is they're considered a fairly poor state, or low. They're not a huge economic powerhouse. They have apparently managed to backfill 100% of the lost tax credits for New Mexico enrollees. At least for this, it might be a short-term thing. It might only be for this, for 2026. I'm not sure, but yeah, they apparently have managed to fill in all of the lost tax credits for all of their enrollees through a series of policy changes and legislation and such. But apparently, so basically,
are they not going to fund their schools?
Well, I think they also recently announced universal pre-K or something.
Oh, that's right.
So I don't know what's going on.
Let's move to Santa Fe. Have you thought about Santa Fe?
yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on in New Mexico, but apparently they've just been really pretty good at managing their money or something. So anyway, so New Mexico, apparently it's all good, I guess. There's that. Now there's several other states, New Jersey, Colorado, and I forget what the other one is. I have it on the page, but there are several other states that have partially backfilled, where they have managed to come up with legislation that'll basically. Oh, Maryland, I think that's the third one, Maryland.
Okay.
Where they're able to fill in either all or some of the lost tax credits for a chunk of their population of their enrollees. It's usually I think it's around 30 or 40% of that is being filled in. And they're starting mostly at the low end, the lower income end of the scale. California is doing as well, although with them it's only like 9 or 10% of what's being lost is being filled in. But yeah, so there's about a half dozen states that are basically covering those losses for a chunk of their population. And then there's also several states that are doing something, that are newly doing something called premium alignment, which gets really wonky, and I'm not going to get into the details on this, but basically Illinois, Washington State, and Arkansas, that's the one red state doing this, are implementing something called premium alignment. Basically, it's a very wonky way of pricing your policies that maximizes these tax credits that are still available. It essentially makes it so that the subsidized plans are cheaper for a lot of the population. It's the easiest way to put it. And this goes back to my point about shopping around. There are some states where a gold plan may actually cost less than a silver plan, which doesn't sound ass backwards, but it just has to do with how the subsidies work, how the pricing is done, et cetera, et cetera. But there are a lot of people, and this has always been the case, but there's more people in more states that may be eligible for that. That's being canceled out because of the lost subsidies in a lot of cases. But the point is, shop around. Don't assume that this plan is the best value that you can get. If you're on a silver plan, you may find a bronze plan some people are actually eligible for 0 premium plans, even with the lost subsidies.
Charles, the governor of every state who cares about their citizens should hire you to have a Zoom call where people can just call in and listen to this and maybe, not that you're giving individual advice, but sort of generalized advice. I think this is incredibly helpful. I mean, already I've learned in this conversation so much more about what's going on and how to deal with some of the pitfalls. And I'm super interested in what's going on in New Mexico. Okay, is there anything else you have on this? Because then I want to ask, some folks have questions on Medicare, and I want to have people ask questions in the chat too, but go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, but I think those are probably the main points. I would also note that there are going to be some insurance carriers that are going to be leaving the market. So there are going to be some people who have to switch, who have no choice but to shop around, because like Aetna is the biggest one. Aetna, slash CVS, they announced earlier this year that they're just pulling out of the entire individual market across multiple states. So there's about a dozen states where if you're on an Aetna plan, you're going to have to get a different plan. But there are also some new entrances. There are a few, carriers that are expanding into new states and stuff. So there's going to be changes there as well. And then, those are probably.
I just have to say, as someone who's thought about business and thought about transaction costs, like the idea that we're having 24 million people individually try to navigate this mess is so flippant, inefficient, and stupid. It blows my mind. And we have a lot of folks on here who watch from Canada. And I just,
they're like,
what the fuck? What is this? This is dumb as hell. This is no criticism. This is no criticism to Barack Obama. I understand that when this passed, sometimes you don't get everything you want. This was better than the alternative. My hope is it would have established, sort of the baseline. And then we'd say, okay, what if we have this? And then my thought was Medicare for more. Keep lowering the age of Medicare, because then you're not going to, whatever. I just thought it'd be a gradual thing, and then people could leave their jobs in the health insurance sector. You wouldn't have a, huge hit. And instead, we have just grown bigger and bigger, these healthcare companies. You wouldn't believe the salaries, the compensation that the executives of some of these firms make, as well as the board. We have just created a leech on top of our healthcare system in this really inefficient way for people to get healthcare coverage. It just blows my mind. I'm sorry. That is my pitch for single payer, or what I like to call it Medicare for more. But anyway, Charles, thoughts?
I mean, President Obama himself said repeatedly that the ACA was always intended as a starter home. It was always supposed to be like you said. Exactly.
It was a Heritage Foundation's plan back in the day, right? Starter home. Yeah.
Part of it, yeah. And it actually includes, the ACA actually includes a whole section called Section 1332 of it, which is designed specifically to allow individual states to experiment with and play around with and come up with ideas of ways to improve it and make it more efficient. In fact, Vermont, right out of the gate, you may recall, Vermont was actually going to go for full single payer at the state level, using the 1332 waiver of the ACA.
I was working in Vermont at the time, but they couldn't afford it.
And they got all the ducks in a row. They passed it with one stipulation but we'll have to pass a separate bill to figure out how to pay for it. Right. And that just fell apart. So it's, and Colorado tried a few years later.
And Vermont's a small state, right? So it's harder to figure that out too.
Right. Because you have to have the tax base and they're
exactly.
So, but yeah, it was always intended to be a baseline, and then you build from there. And what happened was it took another, 7 years until President Biden came in office before they were able to sort of take it to the next level, which was primarily, I mean, they did a lot of things, but the main thing was these beefing up the subsidies, making that better. But of course, Republicans don't want it at all, so they're just trying to tear it all down. So, yeah.
It's interesting. People, not that I'm the pitch machine for Democratic messaging. However, there are two things people hate to waste: money and time. And they don't like to be cheated or confused. And, I hate having to make phone calls, when there's something wrong with your cable, or when you get, or you see, your pharmacy messes something up and you've got to be in that loop, and you've got to have your earbuds in and maybe do some dishes, and because you have to calm yourself down because you're about to spend an hour of your life dealing with shit you don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And Republicans want you to waste your fucking time and your money because they're greedy. Like, that would be a really good message, I think.
It's the funny thing. I've always felt, and again, I am not like a Medicare for all purist type. Okay.
Okay.
I'm open to it, but I'm not like,
I said for more, not for all, but okay.
There are several ways. But what I would say is, I've always felt that the stronger pitch for any sort of single payer system would not be so much the cost savings, although that's that's one thing, but it would actually be what you just said. It would be the bullshit time. The waiting, the pre-approvals, and the waiting on the phone, and the and denial of coverage, and the having to play the back and forth, and having to call back, and having to fill out forms, all the paperwork and BS that you just talked about. That to me would be almost like if you told me you're going to pay, you're not going to save any money, you're not going to pay any more, you're not going to pay any less, you're going to pay exactly as much as you are now, as awful as that is, but you'll never have to be on the phone waiting on hold for half an hour, blah blah blah. That to me would be a pretty compelling pitch as well, because I hate it as much as everybody else does.
My goodness. Okay, so tell me, is there anything, some folks who watch the show are on Medicare, does this affect them?
Medicare, not directly, but there will be inevitable domino effects of this. If you're talking specifically about the subsidies and the ACA, there will be indirect effects that ripple across the entire industry. Probably mostly on the employer coverage side, because again, you have millions more people. Just like with Medicaid, when they start kicking millions of people off Medicaid, same thing. As millions of people lose coverage, that means more ER care, right? That means more going to the ER, which means that the cost of emergency care goes through the roof. The hospitals, they aren't going.
Let me just back up. You skipped one thing, which I know you're thinking, which is if you go to the ER and you don't have insurance, the hospital's out of pocket, as opposed to them getting money from, the health insurance company.
Exactly. So what they're going to do, the hospital has to eat that cost, but they don't want to eat that cost. So what are they going to do? They're going to take that out in their next round of negotiations with the employer insurance companies
and increase the premiums. Yeah.
The employers. Now that I'm not sure. Some of that I think they've already baked into for 2026. Most of it probably wouldn't kick in until 2027 because it might take a year or so for them to see the actual effects. But my guess would be that a chunk of, in fact, that's already happening within the ACA premium hikes for 2026. The full price, the full unsubsidized rate increases are going up an average of over 25% nationally for 2026. And a chunk of that, around around a fifth, 20% of that, I believe, is specifically because of the subsidies ending. What the actuaries at these insurance companies, they say, we expect because of these lost subsidies, we expect a chunk of our younger, healthier enrollees to bail completely. That means it's going to become a worse risk pool, a more expensive risk pool for everybody else who we keep, which means it's going to cost us more, which means we have to raise our premiums even more to cover that. So right. Of that 25% chunk, I think around 5% or so of that is going to be specifically because of the subsidies themselves expiring.
And this is a form of inflation, of course. Something's got to give. We're seeing I saw reporting like banana prices are up over 6%. Ground beef is up over 12%. Apparently roasted coffee, this is what I need to live, is up like almost, over 18, almost 19%. So, at some point, something's going to give. And it feels like when you make these really dumb moves and that happens suddenly, things are going to start to fall apart. And we have a president who's really interested in bailing out a so-called libertarian. Can you imagine? I just have to make this side comment before we bring things to close, but we are doing the swap agreement, which I explained the details of it. Basically, it's bailing out, giving Argentina $40 billion because Donald Trump likes the libertarian president. And last time I checked, libertarians didn't think government was the solution. So now our government is shoring up a libertarian lie. Maybe it's just crazy that we can find $40 billion to do that. Meanwhile, I got to show you a clip. So I always close the show out. I don't know if I did this with you before with Crazy Town.
I think so, yeah.
You have to do that? Yeah. Okay, so let me do our little Crazy Town dance, and I'm going to play a thing. As you know, Donald Trump is off in Asia, and he just addressed the troops. And I'm going to play for you what he said this time. But first... Okay, this is completely, you could hear a pin drop. The troops are silent. And this is Donald Trump back on his bullshit. Okay.
Back home, we had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Energy costs are down. Energy costs are way down. Gasoline prices are way down. Grocery prices are way down. We have a little problem with beef. We're going to get that down very quickly, but the prices are way down. Mortgage rates are down despite having an incompetent head of the Fed. I call him too late. He's always too late. He's too late in lowering interest rates. I call him Jerome Too Late Powell.
Besides that being a bunch of lies, do you see they're like, what is going on here?
That was interesting, especially in contrast to a few months ago when he gave when he basically just came out and said that Democrats are scum or whatever, and they were like the backdrop, they were all like cheering and stuff.
Right.
I'm assuming that the earlier crowd was handpicked to be his loyalists, whereas this was like just whatever troops happened to be.
Yeah, I think the early crowd were cadets, and maybe someone hadn't lectured them. The generals hadn't said, don't do this, because this is a military base, obviously. And someone probably said, you're not going to do that. I mean, you could hear a pin drop there. Yeah, and I'm sure they don't really care about, they're not being paid. And he's talking about, do you see the irony here? He's talking about prices being dropped. These guys aren't being paid. A lot of them depend upon Affordable Care Act plans. Their wives or partners back home are telling them, holy shit.
These are the truth.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's wrong. On SNAP. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. They're on SNAP. Not the ACA. Some of them at home are requiring their family members have SNAP to help subsidize the food stamps, right? The EBT, to subsidize their meals. They're struggling and they're not getting paid, right?
Yeah, even if they're not on SNAP, they're still, even if they're still seeing the prices going up, So
and then he's saying that beef is the only problem, and his plan for beef, of course, is to bring in beef from Argentina, which is pissing the hell out of the cattle farmers. So part of the silence might have been stunning. Yeah. They were shocked out of their minds. Charles, I don't even know what to say. Donald Trump, I've decided.
I wouldn't know what to do. It would be so surreal. Yeah, it would be such a.
I don't think he can. I think he has no control over his greed, his violence, his idiocy. The fact that he thinks a cognitive decline test is an IQ test. He has no control. Everyone propping him up, which is, I think, every single Republican elected, is the problem. They could impeach him in the House and remove him in the Senate in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Those folks have the power. And this is an embarrassment. And the embarrassment, the cringe, only adds upon insult to injury when we see how people are going to be suffering over the next few weeks. And I hope to God that people get this and push their electeds. We cannot wait till midterms. He needs to be drummed out of office. It's too dangerous right now, is what I think. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, if we were a year from now, and everything was exactly the same except that it was the midterms next week instead of stop here, then I think we would squeak through and we'd be able to try to clean up this mess. But another year of this, he literally destroyed a third of the White House.
I know. I mean, literally knocked down the entire, and you've been there. I mean, the entire East Wing.
Yeah, it's gone.
And he's going to put these next week. He's trying out putting his advisors are putting observers at polls. Anyway, I don't want to be negative, guys, but I think I've got to be honest with you. I'm waiting on a miracle right now.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I'm sure I'm doing everything I possibly can to help, to help have a massive blue wave in the midterms, of course. And I'm going to continue doing that. But at the same time, I agree that like the clock is like, I don't know that we have a year. This is.
I don't either, Charles. But you know what? They say, may you live in interesting times. It's actually a curse. So with that, my friend, thank you for joining me. This was, people are loving it. They feel privileged that you spent this time with them, and they want every governor to hire you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. This is where I play Jason's walk-off music.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Taub show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Taub show.